4 Blood is all about shooting, clubbing, and stabbing zombies in the face.
Time to reload!
But it's also a story about a group of immune survivors that band together in an effort to clean up and rid the world of the Ridden Menace. To better get to know the playable characters of Back 4 Blood, I sat down with Simon McKenzie, the lead writer of Back 4 Blood, and Phil Robb, co-founder and creative director at Turtle Rock Studios. So without further ado, let's meet the cleaners.
I got this.
This is Evangelo, a natural-born survivor and the newest member of the team.
He's starting off, he's the youngest member of the team. When it came to writing them, he was also the lens I wanted to tell the story. Because he's new, he hasn't been a cleaner before, this starts as his first mission. So you see kind of like the world expand through Evangelo's eyes. So he's a good entry point if players want to go like, what is this world?
I mean, I think Evangelo is good for a player that would want to, doesn't feel like hanging this close to the team, right? His special ability is he can get out of grabs. So if you get grabbed by a Ridden, he can get out by himself. I mean, he's also a fun character. He's got a lot of fun lines and stuff. So you get to hear some of the more of the humor, than with some of the more serious characters.
Yeah, he's lighter and brighter. He wants to prove himself to the team. So he's kind of like sort of very kind of forward facing. Even when he's kind of afraid, he's kind of like, hey, I'm not going to show it. I don't want to let these guys down.
That's Hoffman. He weirdly digs this whole apocalypse thing.
I kind of love Hoffman. I like the more I drilled into him, the more kind of like sort of like neuroses I gave him. He kind of started off, he is prepared. He has been kind of almost waiting for the apocalypse his whole life. The only thing he wants he wants his parents to be proud of him. So he kind of has these kind of like, as a middle-aged man, goes back to kind of this wanting acceptance by everybody. Hoffman's one of my favorites and is voiced by the incredible Bill Sallows as well. And just, yeah, I mean, what is not to love about Hoffman, really?
Who's laughing now?
As far as like him being a prepper, right? His special ability is he can carry more stuff. He's the guy that you can sort of build almost like a mule type of character, right? He can he has extra utility slots and things like that.
My partner's father is actually a prepper in Ohio. So I kind of knew a lot of the stories and stuff like that. I didn't base Hoffman on that. I based Hoffman's dad and what the type of that kind of upbringing does to a person. So it's like, hey, you know how to strip and clean the gun and stuff like that, and just wanting kind of like that kind of acceptance. And Hoffman was never the type of guy that his dad wanted him to be, so he ended up being like an accountant and stuff. So, but it's always comes from real people. And it's more of a Gestalt entity rather than one person. So like to take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and kind of blend them together. And then you kind of have this unique individual that comes out.
This is Walker, the guy everybody can depend on.
Just doing my job.
Walker was one of the first characters I actually started writing. And I wanted him to be the Rock. And like, he's the one, he's kind of like, he'll have the plan. He'll see the way through. And he'll guide people and make sure his team get there. And he cares deeply about everybody on his team. And in some ways I wanted to kind of avoid that kind of like that, just that hard macho guy. And I wanted him to be there for everybody. But like, yeah, he is, him and Mum are basically the de facto leaders of kind of like our clean teams. And that kind of caring goes through kind of like both those characters.
I think it's safe to say he's like the warrior archetype,
yeah.
Right? Ex-military, right? He was actually on leave whenever the apocalypse happened, right? So he brings that the skill and the experience from real world combat.
And that's Mom. At least that's what we call her because she's tough, doesn't take shit from anybody, and always knows exactly what to say.
Mom is actually second in command at Fort Hope. She's a very strong personality. She was a very strong personality in our local areas. We built up the law. And it's like there's the military characters that we have, and she kind of represents the civilians. And because of her strong kind of like sort of personality and kind of like basically no shit attitude, it's like the civilians kind of look to her to be their voice.
She's definitely a character that has, seen that, done that, kind of, she's done a lot of stuff in her life, right? And not all of it, I would say, like mainstream. She's kind of almost a counterculture type of character.
Yeah, it's start off like a friend of mine called Crazy, who's like sort of a biker in kind of the Midwest, a tattoo artist, and who's had a very interesting life. And that was kind of the starting kind of point, and then kind of like, again, like the process kind of like built on that. But I kind of really wanted that kind of character represented, not in the way it's usually represented in video games, like sort of as a bad person, but someone who's there, who does care about the community and kind of like sort of represents that voice.
Wisdom gained through experience.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not dying today.
She's just as good at blasting Ridden as she is at keeping everybody on their feet. Except for that guy.
Doc, I kind of love Doc. Doc is like, we had a doctor character, and my experience with doctors is the bedside manner, and maybe this is just the UK, tends to be a bit absorbing, a bit kind of like, my God, it's another person complaining. So it's kind of like, I kind of like drilled down on that sort of like, so even when kind of like people got injured in the game, she's kind of like, sort of like a bit of kind of like an eye roll with her kind of personality. Come on, we can get through this and let's get back out there again.
Doc's smart, right? Like she knew she didn't have combat experience, right? She knew that, without the sort of survival type experience that, when the collapse came, she wouldn't, her value may have been in question, right? And a lot of people, why is she still wearing her, her lab coat and stuff like that? Because doctors are like gold in the apocalypse, right? So she's going to wear that to show, hey, I'm a doctor, right? Sort of a way, when the chaos broke out early on, right? That she was able to sort of survive, right? She used her brain rather than her brawn.
Jim is our eye in the sky.
Jim is, our game is sort of set in a fictional city in Western Pennsylvania where basically I grew up. And Jim is sort of an homage to, a lot of the folks in Western PA, they're hunters, they're fishermen, they're outdoorswomen, whatever you want to say. He's sort of the guy that makes me feel at home. We tried to write in some of the Western Pennsylvania speech patterns into his dialogue.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of kind of like sort of feeling with the land and kind of the scouting kind of like sort of. So I kind of wanted. One thing we didn't want to do is kind of like, again, kind of reinforce kind of like that kind of redneck kind of stereotype.
Yeah, we wanted it to be like he is like that, but in a respectful way, not in a like, a mean-spirited type of way.
Carly's head's on a swivel.
Something smells bad, and for once, it is nuts.
Carly again was like sort of.
She was like the latest addition, right, to the team.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of us coming up with her.
Yeah, she was personality-wise a bit of a homage to one of my friends, who's kind of just very, again, kind of like sort of forthright and just. So I kind of wanted like to be action. I also want that kind of like danger, and it works with kind of the skills she has to kind of like sort of like to be that character on the edge.
Just street smart. Right?
Yeah, she kind of hangs at the outskirts of the cleaners, really. It's kind of like sort of like when it's convenient, and when it's like sort of for them and her, she'll kind of like sort of work.
Yeah, she's I guess as close to we get as to the criminal element. She's definitely looks out for herself.
Yeah.
And that badass? That's Dottie. Not me, the Bat. My name is Holly. Just your run-of-the-mill college kid with a baseball bat.
Holly's one of the characters actually inherited. Phil came up with the premise for Holly, and she's athletic, outgoing,
She's an outdoors woman,
Yeah.
outdoorsy person.
So one of this thing, and I wanted someone who's kind of really kind of in your face about things, as kind of personality wise, to kind of match that kind of like sort of, you know, I'm not keeping up. I'm out there, kind of like doing my own thing, and it was kind of good just to get like the baseball bat became a thing when I started kind of like writing it and talked about things, and they put it in as kind of her main kind of weapon, and I'm just I kind of love
Initially,
that.
yeah, like her being athletic, you know what I mean? Like I imagined her sort of, you know, playing softball, you know, in high school and college, right? So the bat just sort of worked. But Holly's my favorite character. She's like the eternal optimist, right? She's kind of unflappable. She's always kind of, what do you want to say? I don't know if happy is the right word, but, you know, looking at the bright side of things.
Looking at the positive.
Yeah. She kind of, she has a tendency to take the piss out of the other characters, you know what I mean?
she is, like sort of, she is that kind of almost glue. And like, I think she feels that role for kind of like the team and stuff. But it's one thing I think with all the characters that they are kind of like sort of, they're in this fight to win it. This isn't like sort of this grim where they're kind of ground down and go like, so like, no, they've got hope. They're kind of like pushing forward, and that's almost exemplified in Holly.
And there you have it. That's a rundown of all 8 cleaners in Back 4 Blood at launch. But we've got more IGN First coverage for Back 4 Blood on the way all throughout the month of August. Thanks for watching, and for everything else, keep it here on IGN.